Welcome to our deep dive today.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
We're going to be exploring the Enneagram Type 9, specifically the Sexual 9 subtype.
Wow.
And we're going to be using Celie from The Color Purple to help us understand it better.
I love that.
Yeah.
Using a fictional character
To
bring it to life.
Yeah, because these personality concepts can be a little tricky
Absolutely.
to grasp sometimes. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be a good way to do it.
And stories help us connect with these ideas on an emotional level. So that's a really great approach, I think.
Yeah.
For those who might be newer to the Enneagram, it's basically a system of 9 interconnected personality types.
Okay.
And each type has its own set of motivations and fears and patterns of behavior. And the sexual 9, sometimes called the merger, deeply desires connection.
Okay.
But they often really struggle with asserting themselves in relationships.
Yeah. And that is really evident in Celie's life.
Absolutely.
Would you say?
Yeah.
The source material really paints her as a classic example of a sexual 9.
Yeah.
You know, we see her constantly putting others' needs before her own, almost to the point of disappearing.
Yeah.
And it even mentions this idea of the legacy from Elias Canetti's book, Crowds and Power.
Oh, interesting.
That I thought was really fascinating.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
I haven't read that one specifically, but I'm familiar with Canetti's work.
Okay.
So I'm curious to hear more about this concept.
Yeah, so the legacy is described as someone who sort of only exists through the eyes of others.
Wow.
They might even fade from photographs.
Interesting.
Which I just thought was such a powerful image, and it really resonates with the sexual 9's tendency to live for others and kind of blend into the background. And Celie really embodies this, I think, in her relationships, especially with Mr.
For sure.
You know, there's that heartbreaking line where she says, "He beat me like he beat the children."
Right.
Except he don't never hardly beat them.
Oh, wow.
You know? And it just shows how she accepts this mistreatment as just a part of life.
That's really powerful. And it speaks to this idea of what Claudio Naranjo, who's a big name in the Enneagram world, calls pathological symbiosis.
Right.
Which is a real challenge for the sexual 9.
Yeah.
It's this unhealthy merging with others where you lose your sense of self.
Yeah.
And Celie's relationship with Mr. is such a painful example of that.
Yeah.
You know, she becomes almost an extension of him.
Yeah.
Rather than her own individual.
Right. It's more than just being selfless.
It is.
It's like a dissolving of boundaries that can be detrimental.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this dynamic plays out differently in her other relationships, too.
Absolutely.
Right.
Like, even in the way that she relates to her sister, Nettie, it's different from Mr. But there's still that fierce protective fusion that's rooted in their shared trauma. So it's like, depending on who she's with, it manifests a little bit differently, but it's still that same underlying pattern.
Right.
And even initially with Shug Avery, it starts off as this idealization and merging, and then it thankfully evolves into something healthier.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that as a starting point as well.
It's interesting how she adapts so completely to each person.
Right.
It's like she's trying to anticipate their needs.
Yeah.
And fulfill a specific role in their lives.
Yeah. And that's a hallmark of what's often called over-adaptation.
Okay.
Which is another challenge for the sexual 9. They're just so incredibly tuned in to the needs of those around them that they end up neglecting their own.
Right.
It's like Naranjo's analogy of the elephant, you know?
Yeah.
The elephant is gentle and focused on the group, but almost insensitive to their own subtle feelings.
Wow.
So it's like they're so outwardly focused that they kind of lose touch with that inner landscape, their own needs.
Now, the source material also mentions acedia.
Yes.
And I have to admit, when I first heard that word, I just thought of laziness.
Yeah.
But it's so much deeper than that.
It is. It's much deeper than just like, I don't feel like getting off the couch. You know? Acedia, as it's described, you know, in the Desert Fathers and all of that, refers to this kind of like disconnect from one's own inner life.
Oh.
A spiritual apathy almost.
Wow.
And in Celie's case, it's not even that she ignores her needs. It's that she doesn't even recognize them as valid.
Oh, wow.
It's almost like she's so used to putting everyone else first that her own needs just don't even
register.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking to see how she kind of buries her own desires and passions.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much of herself she's shut down just to survive in that really difficult environment.
Exactly.
But there is a turning point for her, right?
Yes, thank goodness.
She doesn't stay stuck in this pattern forever.
No, and that's what makes her story so powerful.
Yeah.
Because we get to see that transformation unfold.
Okay.
And it's not like a sudden overnight thing.
Right.
There are these small acts of self-assertion that eventually build up to this pivotal moment of confrontation.
Oh, yeah.
And I think her declaration, "You know that until you do right by me,"
oh, yeah,
marks a turning point.
that scene is so powerful.
It's like a dam breaking.
Yeah.
A refusal to be silenced any longer.
I think what strikes me about that is that it's not just about standing up to Mister.
Right.
It's about her finally acknowledging her own worth.
Yes.
Which has been missing for so long.
Exactly. And that act of setting a boundary is crucial for the sexual nine's growth.
Okay.
They need to reclaim their right to say no to what's harming them.
And to say yes to themselves.
And to say yes to themselves.
And that's where Shug Avery enters the picture.
Right.
And I'm curious, could Shug
Yeah.
simply become another person that Celie merges with?
That's a great question.
I mean,
and I think
yeah.
it would be easy to see how that could happen.
Right.
But actually, their relationship becomes a catalyst for Celie to discover herself.
Oh, wow.
Not lose herself further.
Okay.
You know, Shug encourages her to explore her sensuality.
Yeah.
To experience pleasure
Yeah.
for its own sake, which is a world
Right.
that has been closed off to Celie for so long.
It's like Shug gives her permission to exist as a whole person
Right.
with her own needs and desires.
Exactly.
Not just in service to others, but for herself.
Right.
And this feels like a really crucial
It is.
part of the sexual nine's journey toward healing.
Absolutely.
To be continued in part 2.
I can't wait.
Welcome back. Last time we were talking about how Shug Avery really opens up a new world for Celie in The Color Purple.
Yeah.
One where she can explore her own desires and needs.
For sure.
And it's such a contrast to how she was living before.
Absolutely. Yeah. That shift marks a major turning point in Celie's journey
Okay.
as a sexual nine.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about how this subtype often struggles with setting boundaries. And they can end up in these relationships where their needs are completely overshadowed. And, Celie's early relationship with Mister is a prime example of that.
It's like she had to learn to value herself.
Yeah.
Before she could even begin to build healthy relationships.
Exactly. And the source material actually emphasizes this idea.
Oh, okay.
That self-discovery is the key
Okay.
to unlocking healthy relationships for the sexual nine.
Okay.
And it's not about, becoming selfish
Right.
or detaching from others.
Right.
It's about recognizing your own needs and desires as valid.
So how does that actually play out in Celie's story?
Yeah.
What are the steps
Great question.
that she takes to reclaim herself?
Well, it starts with those small acts of defiance.
Yeah.
We're talking about when she finally stands up to Mister
Yeah.
and declares, "Until you do right by me."
Oh, yeah.
A simple statement,
Yeah.
but it represents a huge shift
Yeah.
in her willingness to assert herself.
That scene always sends chills down my spine.
Me too.
It's like witnessing the birth of her own voice.
Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And it's important to remember that setting boundaries can be incredibly difficult for the sexual nine,
Right.
especially if they've spent years
Yeah.
prioritizing everyone else's needs.
But it's essential for their growth.
It's crucial for their growth.
Right.
Yeah. Learning to say no to mistreatment
Mm-hmm.
and yes to themselves is a key part of their journey.
And this is where Shug's influence becomes so crucial. Yes.
Because she doesn't just encourage Celie to explore her sensuality,
Right.
but she models
Yes.
what it means to live authentically
Mm-hmm.
and prioritize your own well-being.
Absolutely.
And I can see how that would be transformative
Yeah.
for someone like Celie,
Right.
who's been taught to suppress her own desires.
Exactly.
For so long, it's like she finally has permission to be herself.
Yes.
But couldn't you argue
yeah.
that Celie is simply transferring her dependence
Right.
from Mister to Shug?
Oh, that's a really astute observation.
Yeah.
And it's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But I think the key difference here
Okay.
is that Shug doesn't enable that kind of unhealthy merging.
Okay.
She actually empowers Celie to become more independent.
Okay.
Unlike Midstrom, who keeps Celie isolated and disempowered.
Right.
Shug encourages her to explore the world, to connect with other women, to discover her own passions.
So it's not just about the people we surround ourselves with, but the nature of those relationships.
Exactly.
We need people who support our growth, not those who stifle it.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
And that's a big part of Celie's transformation.
It is.
She starts choosing relationships that nurture her spirit and challenge her to grow.
Yes.
Rather than those that keep her small and dependent.
That's beautiful.
So what are some practical steps that someone who identifies with the sexual 9 can take to cultivate this sense of self and start setting healthy boundaries?
Right.
Like, it's one thing to see it in Celie's story, but how do you actually do it in real life?
That's a great question. And I think one of the first steps is simply becoming aware of your own needs and desires. And this can be really challenging for the sexual 9s, who are so used to focusing outward. It's like they need to turn their attention inward. And really listen to that inner voice. It's like tuning into that quiet whisper inside that says, yes, I want this, or no, this isn't right for me.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And once you start becoming aware of those needs, you can begin to prioritize them. And that might mean saying no to things that you don't want to do. Even if it disappoints someone else. Or it might mean carving out time for yourself. Even if it feels selfish at first.
And I imagine that can be really uncomfortable at first.
It can be.
Especially for someone who's used to putting everyone else first.
Absolutely.
But it's essential for breaking free from those patterns of over-adaptation and self-neglect.
For sure.
Now, what about when those old patterns resurface? Because let's face it, growth isn't linear. There are going to be times when we slip back into our old ways.
And that's why having a supportive community is so important. Whether it's a therapist or a close friend or a support group. Having people you can talk to who understand your journey can make all the difference.
And it's about being kind to ourselves.
Yes.
When we do slip up.
Totally.
We're all works in progress.
Absolutely. Self-compassion is key. Remember, Celie's transformation wasn't a straight line either. She had setbacks and moments of doubt, but what ultimately propelled her forward was her commitment to her own growth. And her belief in her own worth.
So much of her strength came from within, even amidst those really challenging circumstances. And I think that's what makes her story so inspiring.
It really is.
Join us for the final part of our deep dive.
I can't wait.
Next time. Welcome back to our deep dive into the sexual 9 through Celie's journey in The Color Purple.
Such a good story. Illustrate this.
Yeah. In the last 2 parts, we've really explored the struggles and breakthroughs of this personality type.
Absolutely.
And today we're going to be diving into what Claudio Naranjo refers to as true union.
Oh, yeah.
Which is that deep, fulfilling connection that sexual 9s ultimately yearn for.
They do.
But as we've seen with Celie, the path to get there isn't always easy.
No, it's not like you just find the right partner and boom.
It's more about an internal shift that allows for healthy connection.
You got it. And it's so important to remember that tendency we've been talking about for the sexual mind to fall into pathological symbiosis. Where they kind of lose themselves in relationships.
Like how Celie essentially became an extension of Mr.
Totally.
In those early years.
Their relationship lacked that balance of individuality and connection.
And that's why Naranjo makes that important distinction between pathological fusion and true union. True union can only happen when 2 whole individuals each with their own sense of self, choose to connect deeply.
Beautifully said.
So it's not about 2 halves making a whole, but 2 wholes coming together to create something even greater.
That's the magic,
And that's what's so inspiring about Celie's transformation.
It is.
She doesn't just find a better partner to achieve this. She goes on a journey of self-discovery that allows her to connect from a place of wholeness, not dependence,
not neediness.
And that journey involves her learning to honor her own needs and desires. She finds the courage to say no to what's hurting her. And yes, to experiences that bring joy.
Right. It's like she finally starts living for herself.
Yeah.
Not just for others.
And that's so crucial.
It is.
For the sexual 9.
Yeah. It's not about rejecting that desire for connection.
Right.
But it's understanding that a strong sense of self is the foundation for a healthy relationship.
It's that idea that you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yes.
You have to fill yourself up first
Exactly.
before you can truly give to others.
That's so good.
And that's exactly what we witness with Celie.
We do.
She reclaims her voice and embraces her desires.
Mm.
Her capacity for love and connection actually deepens.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Her relationships become more authentic and fulfilling.
Yeah.
Even with those.
Yeah, even with those who haven't always treated her well.
Right, and I'm struck by how she retains her sweetness throughout this whole process.
It's beautiful.
She doesn't become hardened or cynical.
Yeah.
It's like she integrates that tenderness into a healthier expression of herself.
Right, and that tenderness, which was once a form of disappearing, becomes a form of presence.
Wow, I like that.
She learns to give and receive love without losing herself in the process.
So how does true union actually manifest in Celie's life?
Great question.
Where do we see it?
Yeah, where do we see that most clearly?
Most clearly.
Well, I think we see glimpses of it.
Okay.
In her relationship with Shug Avery, as Celie grows more confident and self-assured, their connection evolves.
Okay.
Beyond that initial idealized merging into a more balanced and reciprocal dynamic.
Okay.
They're able to appreciate each other's strengths, support each other's growth, without trying to, control or define each other.
And even in her relationships with Mr. and the other characters, there's a noticeable shift.
Right.
She's no longer simply adapting to their needs.
Yeah.
But engaging with them as a whole person.
Yes, exactly.
So Celie's story really highlights,
I think so,
that true union isn't some romantic fantasy, but a real possibility that grows from a deep commitment to self-discovery and personal growth.
So well said.
It's like that desire for merging, which can be so problematic for the sexual 9, is transformed into a capacity for genuine connection, both with themselves and with others.
And that's the beauty of it, right? It's not about getting rid of that desire.
Right.
It's about transforming it into something healthy and beautiful.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the sexual 9, what final thoughts would you like to leave our listener with?
You know, if you're out there and you resonate with the sexual 9, remember that your desire for connection is a beautiful and powerful gift.
Okay.
But the key is to nurture your own sense of self.
Yeah.
That's the foundation for experiencing true union.
Yeah.
The kind of connection that allows you to thrive.
Yeah.
So embrace all parts of yourself. Your sweetness, your strengths, your tenderness. It's all part of who you are.
What an empowering message.
I hope so.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope Celie's journey has inspired you to explore your own path towards self-discovery and genuine connection.
Me too.